all this other stuff related to politicians, which I'm not too crazy about. And we have here a flyer. I got one here too. The Earth Day lecture, even though Earth Day was about 2 weeks ago, or April 27th, Earth Day should be every day. Now, okay, right there. You see here, this is the flyer, and I have one here, and I want to point out that I use this flyer frequently to show everybody, so this becomes a frequent flyer. I just thought I'd share that with you at the time. Now, okay, yeah, it works just for you guys. Okay, now, today's gist of today's thrilling adventure deals with essentially politics, gas prices, the primaries, and pollution. Mainly dealing with politics and how gas prices could not only influence the election, but how it can screw up the whole world. Now, I don't want to insult us Americans, and I was born in New York, if you can tell by my accent. That's right, we spell it Y-A-W-K, New York. Anyway, you know, I am quite disgusted with the American people. First of all, many of them are being dumbed down by the newspapers and our media, okay? And they don't tell you the real issues. Now, it seems to me gasoline prices, if they're even $4 or $5, to me, that is incredibly low. I feel they should be about $25 a gallon, and the reason for that is that will encourage mass transit. Not only that, people will take mass transit, and if they can't, let's put it this way, if they live far away from a train station, they should do what I tell other people to do. If you have to live far away from a train station, you drive to the train station. I mean, if you live far away from work, you drive to the nearest train station and go downtown. Now, a number of years ago, I actually did that from here at Oakton. When I was here, I had one of my students operate the video camera from the TUI and the Edens, okay? I live right there. But anyway, I was telling everybody that those people who live up north and they want to take a train, they can get off here at the TUI exit and drive 7 minutes till the metro line over in Edgebrook. 7 minutes, and then they can park either on the street, or now if you want to risk your car getting towed for no reason, you can pay $150 over there in the parking lot from the train station, which by the way used to be free, but like everything else it's going up. But the point is, you have a choice of just paying $150 and get a lot of work done on the train. Now I consider train time prime time, okay? Besides, one advantage of the train is you get all those free newspapers, you see, which is a very good thing to do. Anyway, so what I want to do though is to show you what's going on with politics and gas prices and what we can do about it, okay? Now, as you all know, I wrote 2 books. By the way, we have a special deal today, 2 for the price of 2. I thought I mentioned that. And I will discuss those later. But I want to mention that we have a problem with global warming and things like this. If you look, this is a relatively new chart of what's going on there in the world. And we see heat, intense heat, and we get rains all over the place. Areas that were once wet are now dry. Areas that are once dry are now wet. And the reason for that is because with global climate change caused by too much CO2, caused by burning fossil fuels, which will get worse if we still pay these ridiculously low gas prices, it causes all these types of catastrophes. We see in Zimbabwe. All this is basically in Africa. We see some in Russia. We see some in the Philippines, Japan, Australia, Thailand, Chile, just about all over the U.S. Now, we see also in the USA, in case those of you who don't know, that's where we're at right now, so I mentioned that. And, okay, we have a lot of problems. Now, first thing on the news today, 7 o'clock news. What did we hear? I think it was Channel 7 with George Stephanopoulos and Robin, Robin Williams? What's her name? Robert, yeah. First thing on the news, they showed you golf ball size hail, tornadoes, okay? And this is happening all over now. And they saw, by the way, a whole band, and that band actually covers Illinois, for those of you who didn't notice that. And we happen to be there too. Now, it's a little cloudy out today, which I don't think, a little cloudy. It could be sunnier. And I was looking on the map, and it looked like the whole area, even where we were at, a little bit in Iowa and all this, the weather patterns are getting quite shaky because of the tornadoes. And I blame this, actually, on too much carbon dioxide, because our price for gasoline in America is actually one of the cheapest in the world. And by the way, I'm going to show you where to go to get even cheaper gasoline. I have everything all set up for you. So you can go there if you want, and we'll explain that. Now, one of the people that really got my goat is this fellow, Newt Gingrich. Not, got misspelled, Gingrich. They blame that on global warming, you see, where it should be Gingrich. Even that, you see, where are we? Oh yeah, we got Newt Gingrich, G-I-N-G-R. Yeah, I blame everything on global warming. Okay, now, why not? Okay, those of you who know, he said if he's president, he's going to get gas down to $2.50 a gallon. Now, this to me is a totally irresponsible statement. Why? First of all, Newt Gingrich never took an environmental science class with me. That's number one. Two, I have some students here, I'm glad to say, who's taking me for environmental science at Columbia College of Missouri. Yes, Missouri, the one down south of here. But I actually go north to Gurnee, right by Great America. That's where the school is. And by the way, how do I get there? I go there the environmental way. I drive my Echo, it gets over 40 miles a gallon, to the Central Street in Evanston. Okay, Central Street in Evanston. I take Metro. I go up to Waukegan, where a student who lives in Waukegan picks me up and drives me to the school, which is about 10 miles. And yes, I do pay them. I buy them $2 instant lottery tickets. So, you know, they can win a lot or a little. Many times they don't win anything, but at least I give something and we all benefit. I should say the highest amount somebody won from that trip was $20, so that's not a bad deal. Okay, anyway, just thought I'd mention it. So I even go the environmental way. Now, when we have fellows like Newt Gingrich, and again, this lecture is not to criticize politics. I'm not here rooting for the Democrats or the Republicans. The only thing I'm saying is that if we don't do things right and we listen to all the politicians, we're going to be in deep trouble. Now, many of you know that I like to tell jokes, but there's one type of joke I don't like, and those are political jokes. And the reason for that is because too many get elected. Okay, sure. All right, now, all right, now, they get better. Okay.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, you haven't heard nothing yet. Okay, now, all right, let me get this. Now, there's a big sign here, if we can get this working. You'll see a picture of Newt Gingrich, and, come on, there. Okay, gas is, there it is. Help bring gas prices down. This is an ad for Newt Gingrich's webpage, okay? Newt, 2012. Now, really, folks, look, I'm going to say this, again, I'm not criticizing politicians. I'm just saying that this is a totally irresponsible statement. Now gasoline's about $4.50. It's $2 more. And my opinion is, if gasoline keeps going down, the environmental quality is going to get worse. There's going to be a direct correlation. Well, let's put it this way. Gasoline prices go down, environmental degradation goes up. Because a lot of Americans, in their infinite wisdom, are going to drive the 1 or 2 blocks to go wherever they have to, rather than walk. Now, I walk a lot, and I'm going to tell you where I walk. On Thursday and Fridays, I teach at Columbia College downtown. It's funny, I teach 2 Columbia colleges, okay? Now, I get off at Union Station, and I walk 1.5 miles to Columbia over on, it's on Wabash. It's about 1.5 miles, and I enjoy the walk. It's good exercise, and it's, you know, I don't have to worry about a bus. And I've been doing that now for 20 years. So you multiply 20, and I go there roughly 60 times a year. I do that walk. You figure 60 times 2, that's 120, roughly 150 miles. And you multiply that times 20, you're talking a lot of miles, 3,000 miles, right, of walking. And I'm happy. I'm not exactly overweight, and I feel good about that. So, you know, it's a good thing to do. So, but if gasoline was $2.50, as he says, you are looking for environmental catastrophe, okay? And I'm going to show you the consequences of global warming in a few minutes. And that all is because we in America, again, we are a victim of our own success. You must admit, we are we're a relatively wealthy country, and you can tell, you know, nobody's actually dying in the streets or poverty, and most people are well clothed. But we are a victim of our success, and we want everything easy, okay? And gas prices have to rise if we're going to save, not only us, but the entire planet. Because if you haven't noticed, we are all connected. Is that correct? The air we breathe, some of it's probably coming from Africa. And the air Africa breathes is probably coming from us. You understand? So we're all intermingled here. Now, so if anybody wants to go to his website, why don't you donate up to $2,500? Remember, if you donate $2,500, divide that by 4. That's a lot of gallons of gasoline you're not going to get, right? Okay? So that's number one. Now, I have here some more information called the fuel gauge report. Okay? Now, this is a website that shows you a little bit about the gas prices. And what they have done, they have made a list of states, okay? And if you look in the areas here, that tells you over there on the West Coast, gasoline is over $4.50. We're over here, get a load of this. We're the equivalent in the West Coast. They say Illinois has the highest price of gasoline. Now, it appears everywhere I go, we always have something like that. You know, I have nothing to do with that, folks, so just to let you know. Okay? Anyway, and if you look over here, this I believe is Utah. That's not Utah, that's New Mexico, right? Yeah, New Mexico, their prices are the lowest, up to about $3.80 a gallon or something like that. Anyway, okay? Now, I have figured out where the cheapest gas prices are. And if you guys want to do something about it, I'll show you where to go. So we get my chart here, cheap gas prices. Let's see where they're at here. I'm going to show you then. Yeah, now let me just get back up here. And then we're going to discuss some really superior problems. Okay, here is a list that comes up. Not working well here. There we go. Gasoline prices. Now, oh wait, this isn't it. I had another chart. Anyway, I'm just going to tell you what it is now. If you want good gasoline prices, the thing to do, I can get you gasoline for 42 cents a gallon. You know where you go? Venezuela. Now, I have figured out a good way to get there cheap. Well, not there cheap. Where is it? Anyway, I had a map here. See, doing all this stuff. Anyway, you can go on here. I show you where to go. You can go to MapQuest. And Venezuela has 42 cents a gallon gasoline. And I'll show you how to get there. What I did was I'm going to put in, first we got to get to Laredo. Now, I just had this. I'm going to show you what's going on here in a moment.
The first tab, you have it already.
Oh, I did? Where was it?
Over.
Oh, you're right. I did, yeah. That's right, I did have it. Okay, now, first of all, if you want to go to Laredo, you go up here from Chicago. I actually put in Skokie. That's where we're at, right here. 7701 North Lincoln. You go here to roughly Laredo. That's on the border of Texas. Then, if you want, you can drive on down over here through Mexico, Central America, and you'll hit Caracas. That's over here. Venezuela. Yeah, right there. Okay? So, that is your cheapest way to go. So why don't you all fill up your tanks, drive down to Venezuela, and get some gas. Now, it just so happens Venezuela is only about 4,200 miles from here. I figured out it'll take 50 hours drive based on MapQuest. Okay, I already figured that out for you. So this is the place to go. Okay. Anybody want to try it?
Yep.
Remember, you'll save gas and you can brag. Hey, we saved gas. Okay. Now, one of the big issues that we really have to be concerned about is, oh, by the way, there's Newt Gingrich. You see him? And he's talking about 250 gasoline. See that? Now, this to me is totally irresponsible, but again, I'm not getting involved in politics and everybody's happy here, smiling.
No, the kid's not smiling.
What's that, the kid?
The kid.
Oh, yeah, he does look kind of glum, doesn't he? Maybe he's a future environmentalist. Okay, he knows, man, we can't have this. Hey, that's funny you say about that kid. He's the one that's going to suffer the most, right? Why is that? Because he's got to grow up. in, we hope, a non-polluted world where global warming doesn't exist. Now, let me go back up here. I'm going to show you some stuff here. Okay, now, one of the biggest issues we have to be concerned about now, and this worries me because my field is in marine science, and obviously marine science deals with the ocean. And this is why I want to talk to you about this first. As you all know, we're producing a lot of carbon dioxide. Now, the ocean and the rainforest are known to be a sink for carbon dioxide, okay? Essentially, a sink is a big sponge, you got it? And it soaks up the carbon dioxide. However, what's going to happen if you cut down the trees? You're going to destroy the sponge that soaks up the carbon dioxide. Not only that, when you cut down the trees, some people burn them. And what do you do in my environmental class when you burn? You get more carbon dioxide, in addition to the stuff we're spewing out from the exhaust pipe, because the gasoline, which now is $4.50, is still dirt cheap. You understand? Now, to complicate this, the ocean. Now, I went to graduate school in 1972 to 1974. And in those days, the ocean was still at a pH of roughly 8.21. 8.21 is the normal pH of the ocean, at least it used to be. We used to think that that's the best place to put carbon dioxide. As a matter of fact, there was a ship called the Vulcanus. The Vulcanus was a ship that would go out in the ocean and burn hazardous waste. They would burn it on the ship, and the smoke containing carbon dioxide would come out through the smokestack. And the reason why they said that was good is because it'll go to the ocean, and the ocean acts as a buffer. But you know, a buffer can only buffer something for so long, okay? And now what we're seeing is, we're seeing destruction of the oceans, which is going to be bad. And how do they get destroyed? Well, here, those of you in my biology class, we have something of interest that also refers to your bloodstream, believe it or not. Okay, why is the ocean getting acidified? Because when you have water plus CO2, carbon dioxide, it mixes, it gives you carbonic acid, okay? Carbonic acid is a mild, weak acid, okay? However, if you put too much of it in the ocean, which is what's happening, it's acidifying the ocean. Nevertheless, it's still an ocean. Now we have two main effects of carbon dioxide in the ocean. First of all, you're going to reduce the carbonate ion. And did you know what depends on carbonate? It is shellfish, like clams and oysters. And most important of all, coral reefs, okay? Now, you see the consequences, how everything is mixed in? Now, what will happen if we destroy the coral reefs? Well, for those of you who like ocean fish, you know the coral reefs are actually the Grand Central Station of the oceans. You have fish where they spawn there, okay? The fish live there and they spawn there. So you take away the corals, you're not going to have enough fish, okay? What are you going to do when you don't have enough fish? Well, anyway, here are the corals, and here I'm going to show you what's going to happen. But anyway, these are nice. Corals are nice. They're actually related to the cnidarians, which are related to the jellyfish. And inside the corals, the reason why corals are colored is because they also have an algae, and actually a member of the dinoflagellate, which is a little protista, and it's called the zooxanthellae. The zooxanthellae are the little algae which live inside the corals, okay? They're known as endosymbionts because they live within the body of the corals, which again, related to the jellyfish. Now, here we have two areas of the ocean. We have this, which has become acidified, okay? Notice the carbonic acid. And this side, which is sort of a normal side where we don't have a lot of acid. Notice the color here in the corals. The coral here is nice and bright color. Where here on this side, I know this is not a picture, but I'm going to show you they're actually bleached. And what we mean by bleached coral is the fact that they are dying, okay? So when the coral dies, the fish are going to die, and that means the ocean dies. And then, as we all know, people in Asia, they get a lot of their protein from fish, right? All sorts of fish. And again, I want to point out that the coral reefs are by far one of the most important parts of the ocean, as well as life, fish life is concerned. Now, what are you going to do? Suppose you absolutely want fish. What are you going to do if you have no fish? What are you going to do? Well, you can do what this fellow does. You get yourself a pole, sit on a bench, and fish for land trout. Just so happens I happen to have one here. I thought I'd show it to you. A little land trout. Now, you notice the color green blends in with the grass, you see? That happens to be me, if you haven't noticed. So here's Charlie the fish. I got him out of there, too. You never know what you'll find. Okay, so, remember, land trout, new species, yes. Okay, now, let's see what else we got. Okay, now, I want to show you some prices here of gasoline. This is probably in California, which to me, is this high price? Absolutely not. It's incredibly low. I believe it should be 25 bucks a gallon. Now you're going to say, well, if it's $25 a gallon, what are the poor people going to do? Well, I'll tell you what. I've been thinking about that, and I'll tell you, I really think about this. You guys might laugh, but it's the only way we can save ourselves. It's obvious we got to get away from gasoline. I'll show you the solutions we have. But the best one is, what are you going to do if you're poor? Well, first of all, you have to encourage them to use mass transit. If I were in charge of all this, I would make taxis, buses, planes, and trucks only pay $1 a gallon. Mass transit will be virtually free, and the cars will have to pay $25 a gallon. And what's going to happen if that's the case? Well, you're going to bet people are going to switch, and if they can't take mass transit because they live far out where there is no mass transit, I was thinking of some solutions to that too. And again, I'm talking about the poor people because obviously they're going to be deeply affected, right? You can't just raise the price up to $25, okay? So the answer is, if this is possible, you have the governments get involved and you supply buses and perhaps trains, or perhaps even build trains out there, or get more buses out there. You understand? In theory, that could be done. Now, I'm going to say something to you. There was an earthquake in Los Angeles, I forget the year, I think it was in the 70s or 80s, a big one, that wiped out a lot of Los Angeles at the time. And according to the World Watch Institute, at the time, meant everything was wiped out, the roads and stuff. Well, a lot was wiped out. And so what happened was, the city decided to sign a contract to have the builders do a rush job to build the highways. And what the people did, they set up detours. And so that discouraged people from actually driving, when in theory there was some trains and buses available. And what happened was, for about 3 or 4 days, the people took the buses and trains. And once the detours were set up, the people went back to using their cars. And again, to make matters worse, by the way, I think Duke Magee was the governor of the state at the time. To make matters worse, the builders, they rushed to continue building the highways. And they actually got money for finishing the job before they were supposed to, which amounted to a few $1 million. And what that meant was, that encouraged people to go back to their cars. You understand? What they should have done, and they had a perfect opportunity to do it, is to build a light rail system, get the tracks backed up. You understand? Now, I believe if they put a lot of tracks, they would have a lot more trains than now. That's just what I say. Now, in those days, maybe they didn't think about it, because all they cared about was the car drivers, okay? In California, it's really a sad story, because a number of years ago, I think it was in the 30s, they had a very good mass transit, trolley cars and buses and things like this, which they took away because the car industry came in. And of course they said, hey, why don't we give everybody their own means of transportation? Who needs a bus, truck, trolley car? Let's let them drive. And for those of you who haven't been in Los Angeles, you know, there's a big problem. Is that correct? Now, I lived there for 5 months, and I'm sorry I did that, because every time you wake up and you go outside, you say, boy, it's a bad day for breathing. And I always say, if the mayor of Los Angeles wants to have people come, he should advertise, hey, come to LA and see the air, okay? Because you can really see it there, you understand? Okay, so, you get the idea. And by the way, here's another one, gasoline, arm, and leg, and firstborn. Now, I didn't make this up, but some people think gasoline is high, okay? And again, it is really incredibly low, considering in Europe they pay about 8 to 10 bucks a gallon. And what do they do about it? They drive a small car, okay? Now, for those of you who ever go on my Facebook, you'll see me there. I have a picture on Facebook. What do I have? I'm in front of a Cinquecento. Anybody know what a Cinquecento is?
Italian car.
It's an Italian car, no bigger than this little area here. Cinquecento in Italian means 500. I believe that's the milliliters of the motor, okay? It looks like a toy, but it's actually a car that could probably hold 2 people, okay? And it really works. And so that's the way so what they do is, that's the way we should go. I mean, they drive small cars. Here we drive gas guzzlers. Now, they did take away the Hummers, by the way. I want to point out they took away the Hummers, and I want to point out why they took away the Hummers. Well, let's put it this way. They took away the Hummers because there wasn't much demand for it. And do you know why those cars were called Hummers? Well, I'll tell you. It's written in my book, the first book, The Earth is My Patient. Because when you're only getting 10 to 12 miles a gallon, the oil execs are humming all the way to the bank. We're in the money, we're in the money. You see? That's why they're called Hummers. And I like to call them bummers because they took them away, okay? All right. Anyway, so you can't buy those anymore. Now, here's something else I want to point out. This, to me, I point this out to all my classes. Here we see 2 individuals. Now, here's the question, and this is why I am furious and you should be furious. See, the point I'm trying to make is that when you hear about all the news about gas prices and the primaries and pollution, and everybody says, well, they blame Obama for the gas prices. They're too high. And then Newt Gingrich gets up there and say, we're going to give you $2.50 a gallon and all this stuff. You see, it's as if the only thing that matters is the price of gas. Now, why has the American public been so dumbed down? And I mentioned this earlier. It has to do with the media. Now, here we see 2 individuals. If I ask you, who's this guy here? Everybody knows, right? Who is that guy? Michael Jordan, right? Now, how many of you know who this guy is on the left? Okay, anybody remember in my environmental class? Nobody? Yeah, I'm surprised you don't know. I think Mike knows, but I'll tell you. Who is he? Right, what did he do?
He figured out that CFCs were depleting the ozone.
Destroying the ozone, right. Because he's in my class, that's why he knows. A couple others know. Now, by the way, I shook his hand. You see this hand? I also gave him one of my business cards. Now, how did I meet this young man? Well, now he's not so young. But anyway, as you know, I teach at Columbia College downtown, and we had a chairman by the name of Charles Cannon, who now works there. He used to be our chairman. And every month, see, he's a chemist, and he had some extra tickets to the American Chemical Society meetings. And these were held at fancy hotels and stuff, you know. They give you a big meal, and then they have somebody give a lecture. Well, it just so happens that, you know, he invited me all the time. Every few months, I would go to a few meetings. And one of the meetings I went to happened to be the one that Mario Molina was at. And by coincidence, I always wanted to meet him, because he's actually one of my heroes. Mario Molina, along with F. Sherwood Brolin and Paul Cruzen from Germany, they all won the Nobel Prize, I believe it was 95, for discovering how the ozone layer gets broken down by the chlorofluorocarbons. And chlorofluorocarbons, by the way, is the stuff you use in your air conditioners in the car. Now they've changed it. In the late 90s, they changed it to something called 134A, which does not contain chlorine, okay? It just contains fluorine, hydrogen, and chlorine. They're called CFCs. They're called fluorofluorocarbons. All they contain is fluorine, hydrogen, and carbon. So anyway, now, this is the point I'm making. The media is not doing their job. If they did do their job, you would realize who this guy is. Now, if I would have asked somebody 10 years ago who was more important for Chicago, everybody will say this guy, right? Michael Jordan. But if everybody says who's more important for Chicago with me, it's Mario Molina. But he's not only more important for Chicago, he's more important for Mexico, Brazil, China, everywhere. You see the point? It's because of him that nobody in this room is cooked by UV light. You get the point? Unfortunately, the amount of chlorofluorocarbons has been diminishing over the years. You see the point? So anyway, this is the prime example that I always give all my classes, because to me, he's my hero, and he should be your hero. You understand? Okay. Now, by the way, here's the distance if anybody wants to go. As the crow flies from Chicago to Caracas, it's only 2,000 miles or 4,000 kilometers. And by the way, for those of you who don't know the conversion factors, every 1.6 kilometers equal a mile. Okay? You got it? Okay. By the way, does anybody know what the longest word in the English language is? You don't know? I'll tell you what it is. It's the word smiles, S-M-I-L-E-S, because there's a mile between the two S's. So anyway, okay, so anyway, so again, if you guys want to, okay, now, I'm almost done, you guys. Now, anyway, here are the routes. You can go to Texas, and then from Texas, you can go down south. Now, here's a map. You can see, if you want, you can leave Chicago, go all the way down here, Venezuela, and you'll find $42. Now, here is something, too, the media really isn't talking about. One more thing. Where do we get gasoline from? It comes from oil, okay? Now, 2 years ago, almost to the day, actually 2 years ago, in roughly 2 weeks, we had the oil spill from the Macondo well over in the Gulf of Mexico, okay? Now, what we see here is something that's evidently occurring because of evolution. Okay, now, does anybody know what these things are? What kind of shrimp? They're blind shrimp. Why are they blind? The reason why they're blind, because evidently, according to Stephen Gould, well, actually, he died a few years ago, but I was listening to somebody talk about this, and he said there was a gene in organisms that will be able to turn on certain characteristics, okay? And in this case, the gene made these shrimp not blind, but they were born without eyes, okay? I don't know if you can say blind, but they don't see because they have no eyes. I don't even think they were born with eyes. Now, most shrimp have eyes. So what actually happened? Well, according to the theory, during the oil spill, it got dark there, okay? The shrimp couldn't see. So somehow their genes turned on. So when they gave birth to other shrimp, somehow that gene would turn on, since they couldn't see, to somehow turn off the eye-producing gene. You understand? I know that sounds far-fetched, but a lot of these things happen. Because those of you who heard of things in the medical profession, like MRSA, which means methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, what does that mean? Well, methicillin is a powerful antibiotic, and what happens is the bacteria are getting used to it, and they're just, they adjusted to it. They become resistant, you see? And so this is a form of evolution that we ourselves are causing. Does that make sense? And so these shrimp are getting blind, were born blind. At least that's the theory, because if you read the papers now, by the way, you got to dig for this. You're not going to find it on the front page because I don't think the media wants you to know about this, or individuals, because if word got out, you know, there'd be a lot of people being upset. Now, I don't know what's happened with the taste of shrimp. I don't eat shrimp, but those people who do, I don't know if there's any special taste or not. But anyway, this is something to be aware of. So, again, when they talk about oil prices and things like this, they do not consider the other consequences. You understand? Again, let me go back to Newt Gingrich for a moment. See, he's just a politician, and all he cares about is getting elected, right? And why is he saying all these things? Because he knows the American public who's listening are totally oblivious. All they care about is having more money in their wallets, you see? And this is why, in my other book, and I'll show you the two pictures, by the way, I'm not trying to push the book, just so I mention it, called Prognosis Disaster, I mentioned the fact that we have to get rid of money because it's destroying everything. Now, how do we do that, and how do people buy things and things like this? I absolutely have no idea. I just think we have to think about it. You understand? Because when you have so much poverty in the world and so many rich people, and you know, it's just, it bothers me. It really does when I see a lot of poor people. Now, a couple other things I'll allude to. Here we see a fish, and this fish has lesions, okay? Which means he has sores, and he's not actually a healthy-looking fish. They actually fished him out of the Gulf as well, okay? So as we see, a lot of these fish are being born defective, and that's because, you know, you can't just keep drilling in a body of water. Now, based on the last number I heard, there was something like 15,000 wells in the Gulf of Mexico for oil. And again, not to scare you all, but we are destabilizing the Gulf. Okay, to some of the literature that I read, and that is not a good thing, okay? You say, well, how can humans destabilize an area that big? Well, 15,000 is a lot, it's a big number, right? And when you keep drilling and drilling and drilling, something's going to give, and I'm afraid it's the Gulf. Now, by the way, one more thing, if those of you who like eating shrimp, here's one with tumors on it, okay? Again, these come from the Gulf, probably due to the oil. And again, I want to point out that the hydrocarbons in oil are known to be carcinogenic. See the point? Okay? And so when you have organisms like this, which swim around in this stuff, it's no doubt that they're going to come up with tumors. All right? Now, what is the main, let me just finish up and then I want to show you one more thing. What is the main solution to all these things? Whenever I give a lecture, I just don't want to talk about without giving a solution because that wouldn't make any sense. But I do have a solution, and we can do that now. And as a matter of fact, you can go online, and there's a place called Solar World, and they can set you up with solar panels, okay? Because believe it or not, Kenya, now that's just coincidence that President Obama's father was from there, but Kenya is one of the first countries in Africa that they used to have over 150,000 homes getting their electricity by solar, and now, that was over 10 years ago, you see? So now how many are run by solar? So if Kenya can do it, we can do it. And again, solar panels, I'm going to show you that house, but first let me show you how they work. Solar panels are real easy. You need hundreds of little panels made with silicon and doped with boron, and this becomes a semiconductor. And what happens is the photons, which is the actual physical particle of light, they hit the panel here, and then it produces electricity. See it? And you need, through many of them, to run a house, but you can run the basics, as you see this house here. Okay? Now that's a good house, and if you notice, every little white speck here is a panel. And of course, okay, it's going to cost some money, but just like everything, remember when the price of computers were like over $2,000? Now they come down to a few hundred, and of course the quality or the power is 1,000 times more, right? Remember the 286s? I remember my first one. What was the number? 685 kilobytes or something. Now we got the terabytes, you know? There's a big difference. So the prices go down almost infinitesimal, okay? So if everybody would put solar panels on their home, it's obvious the price would go down, and they would give jobs to all these people, because if every house has it, right? You can give all the oil, the people who are drilling for oil, take away the oil jobs and give them jobs building solar panels. I'm sure they can do it, right? It's less greasy, less dangerous, and you don't have to worry about explosions, right? Also another thing, that will protect the future coal miners, who we hope will not have to mine coal in the future. They will help build solar panels, you understand? So if we don't worry about coal, we don't have to pollute. Does that make sense? You got it? Okay, well, he doesn't see it. He was in my class. Okay. Now, two other things. I'm not here, again, like I said, to push my books, but for those of you who know, I've written 2 books called The Earth is My Patient and Prognosis Disaster, and I mentioned this. Now, I have a web page that it's called davids-earth.org, and there's a lot of stuff on there. Let me just show it to you. Again, this is good for my students and stuff, and there's a whole bunch of information here. I have some links to various environmental web pages and stuff like that. I have my resume up there. I have pictures of me, ways to contact me, environmental stuff, my biography, and I have here, I just want to show you real briefly a couple of the books. First book I wrote is called The Earth is My Patient, and that book tells you about the real causes of environmental pollution. And again, we're not talking about smokestacks in cars. We know smokestacks in cars pollute, but why do we have smokestacks in cars? And the real reasons are greed, stupidity, politicians, ignorance, laziness. You understand? All these things, tradition, all these things that you all take for granted really cause pollution. You understand? Stupidity. I have a lot of things on stupidity. And perhaps one of the biggest things I have, I just want to tell you one thing that you probably don't think about. I have a section in the book called Killing Live Trees to Bury Dead People. What do we do with that? Well, that means making coffins. What do you need a coffin for out of a live tree? See what I'm saying? You know, now they make them out of cardboard. By the way, do you know why cemeteries are noisy places? Because of all the coffin there. Now, a little extra there. Okay, now, then the other book. Okay, then we have the other book called Prognosis Disaster, and it's subtitled The Environment, Climate Change, Human Influences, Vectors, Disease, and the Possible End of Humanity. Now this book, by the way, as well as the first, has a very big Oakton connection, because for those of you who don't know, there's a nice fellow here from the Philippines named Jacob Nieve. He teaches anatomy and physiology, and he's a doctor from the Philippines, and he wrote the section on diseases. He's a very good guy there, okay? And of course, one thing I should tell you also about the Philippines, of which you're all aware of, the Philippines has a very famous lady called Imelda Marcos. Remember her? Well, every time I think of the Philippines, I think about her, and she's famous for one reason. What is it? She has about 2,000 to 3,000 pairs of shoes. And so, what does that have to do with a lecture like this? Well, they figured out why she has 2,000 to 3,000 pairs of shoes, and the only plausible explanation was the fact that she is the reincarnation of a millipede. Anyway, now, slow there. Okay, now, something else that I want to mention. I have here a book. Now, I didn't write it. I just want to show it to you. Why is this significant? Well, I'm going to explain why it's significant. Notice looks like a children's book, and it is. It's called Can the Earth Survive Deforestation Crisis? Now, I picked this up at the Skokie Library, just up the road there, okay? You know, on Oakton Street, a couple blocks from here. Now, I read a lot of these type books. These are children's books. See? Why am I reading a children's book? Because I gain a tremendous amount of information. See? Even though this is mainly written for middle school kids, I read it because I learn a lot. You understand? I can use all the high-tech books we have, environmental books and things like this, with the advantage of a book like this. It summarizes stuff, makes it simple, quick to the point. You understand? They don't elaborate on the issues. I do that if I want the information. I go to the other regular books, you know, that we use for high-tech college classes and, you know, other books. But this explains a lot of stuff. Now, I read a lot of these, not only on deforestation, but they also have some biographies of famous people such as Einstein and Fermi and things like that. You understand? So the point I'm making is, for you to get educated in any environmental field, you can even use these books. And believe it or not, you learn a hell of a lot. You don't need a fancy schmancy book. Does that make sense? I read these and I enjoy them. And, you know, I knock them off a couple hours, or, you know, that's why I ride the train a lot. Train time is prime time. And that's another thing, folks. If you take the train, you get a lot of work done instead of worrying about the other guy, next guy coming, and road rage and breathing the smog from his car. You know what I'm saying? By the way, speaking of smog, what do you call the guy that runs in the back of a car? Exhausted.
That was a good one.
He likes them all. What do you call the guy that gets run over by a car? Tired. Yeah, he got that. Okay, now, with that, are there any questions, comments, complaints? Nobody's got anything? Yes?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Why can't you starve in the desert?
Oh, he knows that. He's waiting for me because of all the sandwiches there. They're bologna ones at that. He likes that one. Yeah, Rick, go ahead.
I was wondering, what actually would happen to the coral once it has died? Because does it actually just still stay there?
Yes, very good point. And by the way, I'm going to show you something else. I'm glad you reminded. Yes, what Rick asked, see, first of all, the coral gets bleached. Why are they bleached? Because the algae, called the zooxanthellae, which live within the little, the corals belong to the cnidarians, the jellyfish. They actually make the corals. They excrete it. You know, they have a calcium carbonate body which excretes it. And what happens is they die. And when they die, all you have essentially are the skeletons, not the skeletons of the so-called corals, because they don't really have skeletons. They don't have bones or anything like that, but they produce the coral. The only thing that's left is the coral, and that destroys. They're just sitting there. And when you get something like that, you're going to get growths of algae like calpura or something else, algae species, which are not really good because they overtake. Now, let me just show you. Let's look at a picture of bleached coral. And hence, this is the term bleaching, folks. And this is what we use. And I'm glad you asked that. And by the way, there are other diseases of coral called white band disease and black band disease of corals, okay? And see, these are images. Now let's try to get that one out. And okay, let's go up here. And this is what you get. And this is very bad. Now, if you see the bleaching, and notice though, this is relatively near the surface. Corals have to be near the surface. Why? Because the algae live there. The algae photosynthesize. And the algae, in this case called the zooxanthellae, which by the way are organisms related to those of the red tide. You heard of the red tides? You know, some of them are toxic, such as Alexandrium, catenella, and all these things. They make people sick, as well as they clog up the gills of fish when they multiply like crazy. Anyway, these are just going to be left there, and then maybe algae or fungus is going to grow, and you're just going to have a dead zone. Because this, again, is the Grand Central Station for spawning, you see? The corals supply a lot of food and shelter and everything, you understand? By the way, one thing too, I'm glad you mentioned that. When tourists go to a coral reef, and they cut a little bit of it, they're not supposed to do that, even a live coral, because coral can maybe grow only an inch a year, you see? They're very slow growing. This is another thing we have to worry about. Corals grow such a small pace. And by the way, if you haven't gone to the aquarium down the shed, they're actually growing coral. They have now ways of growing it. You can buy baby coral, if you call them babies, actually in fish stores. You can actually grow coral, but it takes a while. It's fun to grow. I don't do it, but I've seen it grow, and you can actually do it. But I'm glad you asked that. And here, let me show you one, since you asked about coral. Again, they have the white band disease and black band disease. Let me just show you white band disease, because these affect corals. Let me get up there. Yeah, white band disease. And they give you the appearance of band because they kill certain parts of the coral. Let's see if we get this up. Oh, fine. It's amazing the internet these days, because we can get stuff at the drop of a hat. Push up a finger. Okay, so if it works. I don't know what's the matter. There it is. This takes a while. There we go. Let's look at images. And there we go. See, you have these bands here. And this part of the coral is dead. Oops, it wasn't available. Of course, it would be unavailable. You know, Murphy's law. He follows me around. Let's try some more images. All right. There. You see? We have a whole bunch of white spots. Yeah, see? How's that? See that, Rick? Okay? These are called by fungus or other types of organisms, okay? And, oh, by the way, the temperatures in global warming, when they increase, they kill the algae, the zooxanthellae, and then they die and you get the bleaching. And the point is it's going to be left there. And what's going to happen? You see, some of these also act as food and shelter. Other fish are not going to go there if they see the coral is dying. So what's going to happen? They themselves won't spawn. Does that make sense? And we have a big problem. So this is part of the problem. So again, folks, I want to point out that the whole world is interrelated. Does that make sense? With everything. That's why it's important. First of all, don't believe politicians, which is unfortunate, because a lot of them, most of them, I'd say, do not tell the truth. Now, there is a statement, I think it was Aristotle or Socrates or something, and he said, which is true, he says, the smart people do not run for office. The trouble with that is they are ruled by the dumber ones. Does that make sense? You see the point? Now, I didn't make that up, but I believe it to be true. And as you see, many times it is. Okay, any other questions? I'm here to answer any question you want. Yes?
I remember I saw like the latest article about solar powers. Now Nevada and California are investing by this company that's recommending solar powers.
Of course. That makes sense. And by the way, one thing about solar power, as Rabina said, listen, any place that got sun, you can use it. Even in Chicago. What's wrong with it? Nothing. You have the sun. Is the sun shining today? Of course it is. Now, does this building have a roof? Of course it does. What is the biggest waste of space on the planet? Rooftops. We could use every single roof to turn it into a solar power generator. You understand? Now, what are you going to do at night? Well, with technology, what's wrong with having one set of solar panels running the house, the other one charging batteries? You understand? That can run everything until it gets daylight again. You understand? What about in the Arctic where you have 6 months dark, 6 months light? Well, first of all, a lot of people don't live there. And two, there was a magazine, it's still out, called Popular Mechanics, or one of these type that give you futuristic designs. There was one that I read about putting up a satellite or some sort of device up in space that will actually get the rays from the sun and beam them down anywhere in the world as electricity. You understand? So in theory, every single spot on the earth can be electrified. You understand? So with all this technology, we can actually do it. And that is why, folks, I am predicting and hoping that within the next few years, we don't have to worry about the price of gasoline because nobody's going to use it. You understand? And this is why I really get frustrated, because when we have these politicians, all they care about is getting elected. Doesn't matter what side they're on. That makes sense? Unfortunately. And again, unfortunately, none of them ever took a class with me because I would straighten them out. Now, I do have a few in my environmental class here, and as you see, they like to hear me, right? Okay, just thought I'd share that with you. Oh, by the way, we have, anybody here from Columbia downtown? Nobody. Well, that's okay. So I got two of my schools represented. I have both Columbia of Missouri here and Oakton. It's a good thing I teach a couple schools, otherwise I wouldn't have any audience. You know, I got to bring my own. There's Mylon there. He's from Columbia. He's in my environmental class. Mr. Forrest, he's in my environmental class. There's Charles. He's in my animal class, biology class. He's in my biology class, right? See? Everyone else here is from Oakton, my biology class. Okay. Any other questions, comments, anything? Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for coming. I hope you gained some insight into this. And remember, go out there and raise hell, man. We got to save the planet.